All right. If the administration was hoping the haunting reality of the Bergdahl swap, releasing these 5 high-priority terrorists was going to go away anytime soon, the reality is it's not. Earlier today, during a hearing on Capitol Hill, the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, appeared. And I've got a clip of what he had to say, but let me check. Do we have the congressman yet? Okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and go to the congressman, and I'm going to play this clip here in just a moment. But joining me now is the representative from the 5th Congressional District of Oklahoma, Congressman James Lankford, a good friend of mine. James, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thanks, Tony. Very much. Good to be with you.
All right. I want to get to Bergdahl and that swap, which has Americans across the country incensed, and rightfully so. But the big news today, the upset yesterday here right outside of D.C. in Virginia, where Eric Cantor, the House Majority Leader, lost from in his race against David Brat, basically unknown. But you're just, I think you're just coming out of a meeting on Capitol Hill. Where does the GOP go from here?
Yeah, I just literally walked out of that meeting just minutes ago. Eric Cantor has announced that he is stepping down from his leadership post as the majority leader as of the end of July. And the speaker set an election for a new majority leader the 19th of June. So next Thursday, House Republicans will have a leadership election. And we will see in the hours ahead how many people line up to be able to run for that position as majority leader, what that means. If there are other individuals like Kevin McCarthy, the current whip, if he runs, then that would also trigger elections for him in that position. And so this could be a pretty massive shift that happens in the leadership elections. So these are only elections for the unfilled positions, I guess, at that point.
Right. And, of course, after the next election, which comes up in November, there will be elections once again for all of those leadership posts.
That's correct.
But James,
this would only complete this term of Congress. The House of Representatives votes on new leadership every November, basically every second November, right after the elections nationwide, and the House elects new leadership for the next session.
Now, James, this is a pretty huge political event that took place last night. It's been over 100 years since something like this has occurred, where a sitting majority leader was defeated in his reelection bid. No one saw this coming, or at least not many people saw it coming. What's the sense on Capitol Hill from a standpoint? Was there a message here that was being communicated to Republicans?
Well, it's interesting. There are a couple messages that are coming out of it. One is Cantor worked very hard in 2008 and 2009 to get the class of 2010 elected. Remembering that, when we go back to 2008 and 2009, Republicans in the minority in the House obviously still are in the Senate. We had 63 Democrats that lost their seat in the election of 2010, completely flipped the House, and no one saw it coming. Cantor was one of those individuals traveling all over the country to make that happen. Well, the challenge seems to be is that he just kept traveling all over the country to be able to maintain those relationships, and he wasn't in his district enough. Just didn't stay connected. Continued to make connections with other what people saw as a more of a business-friendly person rather than a grassroots conservative. In his district, seemed to feel like he didn't represent the district anymore. He represented the whole country, but he didn't represent the district. And they wanted someone that represented the district and their values and their perspective and was going to be home.
Well, let's get to James. I want to talk about a couple of the issues which have been prominent, as well as the issue of him not being at home. I've certainly heard that. He's not been in the district. When you're a national leader, you are required to travel some. That does take you out of your district, but that's why you got to pretty much be in a pretty secure district to do that and reflect the values of those in your district.
That's correct.
His district is a pretty conservative district. And he's been out there talking about, and I'm going to say this a little bit later when I focus on this with Terry Jeffrey, but Eric is a personal friend. I've worked with him, but I do think that increasingly we've seen a number of Republicans that have taken on issues that are inconsistent with where the Republican platform is and where many conservative voters are. And frankly, I think he may have pushed too far. And I think one of the issues that's been out there that's been very prominent in the discussion in the last 18 hours has been the issue of immigration.
Right. It has been. He's been out front pushing on immigration and trying to get a serious immigration reform. He even made the statement today that his position on immigration has not changed at all in that. That's who he is, and that's what he believes, and he wants to be able to continue to be able to push that to resolve. And there are a lot of Republicans that say, yes, we see major issues in immigration as well.
Mm-hmm.
We had 3 million people here illegally in the 1980s. We now have 11 million people here illegally now. It's very obvious there are major problems, and there are things to be done. But to be more comprehensive, in around on amnesty and other things like that, a lot of Republicans backed up and said, as a conservative, that's not who we are as a nation. That's not the solution we're looking for. And I think that came up as a district as well.
Yeah, and I would have to say, I would think that all the undercurrent that issue is going to come up before the end of August, or before you leave for your August break, I have to think that goes away with this.
I would certainly assume that it does, and I was never convinced it was coming up before. I saw a lot of media buzz on it and people talking about it around the edges, but I saw no enthusiasm among the conservative grassroots conservatives that are within the House to be able to take that on. Why would we negotiate with Harry Reid on any kind of immigration bill and assume that's going to turn out well?
Exactly. You're listening to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins, joined by Congressman James Lankford of Oklahoma. James, I want to shift gears now and go to the issue of Bergdahl and the swap for the Taliban 5. And today on Capitol Hill, we had the Secretary of Defense basically making a statement in defense of this swap. And I want to play this clip of his comments earlier today, and then I want to get your reaction to it.
I want to make one fundamental point. I would never sign any document or make any agreement, agree to any decision that I did not feel was in the best interest of this country, nor would the President of the United States, who made the final decision with the full support of his national security team.
So, the full administration, then, I assume, is all on board with this. And I think how are they defending this?
You know, what's interesting is you go back to 2011, they brought a deal very, very similar to this to the House and Senate Intel committees, and said they want to be able to make this swap, and here's how they would do it. And the House and Senate Intel committees, Republicans and Democrats alike, said this is a very bad idea. The current, at that time, Department of Defense Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta said also this is a bad idea, and then the administration walked away from it. Now they come back, and it's fascinating in a couple of ways. One is he reveals that this is how different this body is that the president has put together, that the previous group would say this is a bad idea, so he brought people in that would tell him, yes, that this is a good idea. And then the people that in Congress that he knows would disagree with him, he just didn't tell them at all. So he went to his yes people around him. They all confirmed the yes that he was looking for, didn't seek outside advice. And one more thing that's interesting on this. Remember at the beginning of this debate when it came up that the president did not come to Congress and get the 30 days advance notice, which is required by law. He said, well, this is so confidential and this is so classified that we just couldn't bring it to people outside the circle. And now Hagel talks today about how many people were involved in this decision and how many of them signed off, but, oh, by the way, we didn't have time to get to the House or Senate Intel committees. So it just, again, shows the duplicity that's going on. They're searching for an answer, and every time they bring up an answer, it disregards the previous answer they gave.
You know, my dad used to tell me that. He said, if you just tell the truth, you don't have to keep making up stories.
It's so much easier just to tell the truth the first time and keep, as my mom used to always say, you got to learn to keep your lies straight if you're going to do that.
Well, and add a little commentary to that, I understand the number of those in the administration who were informed of this prior to any member of Congress being informed was about around 80 members of the administration. So, I mean, we're not talking about just a handful.
We've had numbers between 80 and 90 that were informed of this. And again, they come back and say this is so classified we couldn't let it out. But, oh, by the way, when the president was going to take out Osama bin Laden, Congress was notified behind the scenes on that one. So apparently this is even more classified than the Osama bin Laden raid.
Right. And I mean, there's protocol by which there are members, leadership of both parties in both houses that are informed of these confidential, classified steps being taken. And, of course, they're held accountable for that as well. But in this case, completely sidestepping Congress. James, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you weighing in today and giving us the latest from Capitol Hill.
You bet. Glad to do it, Tony. Thanks for what y'all are doing.
All right. Congressman James Lankford.